Hi, this is Andy Adair, and this is the We Are Big YouTube show. Got a special episode this week. The Big Ten Media Days were this week. So I went and listened to all the press conferences and picked and chose basically one statement that each coach said that I found interesting, and I'm going to expand on it. So, got a special episode this week, and here we go. Let's start with Indiana and head coach Tom Allen. The Hoosiers are coming off a 4-8 season. When asked about the team's culture and off-season recruiting headed into the 2023 season, Tom Allen said, "Our one word for 2023 is toughness." It fits the bill when you're talking about Indiana football since Tom Allen's been there. They're always a tough out. I mean, the success has only been there that 1 year, the COVID year. But when you think Indiana, you never think, hey, we're just going to walk into Indiana and win. Toughness is also going to be there all of 2023. That schedule they're looking at, very rough. They have Ohio State to begin the season. They have Louisville non-conference. There's only two non-Power 5 teams on their schedule. And then they cross over with Purdue, Illinois, and Wisconsin. So they don't get the Northwestern. They're not getting the weak team over in the West in the crossover games. So 2023 is a season defined by toughness for Tom Allen, which completely makes sense for that program. Now let's jump over to Illinois, where Bret Bielema is coming off his most successful season since rejoining the Big Ten and becoming the coach of Illinois. He was asked about kind of his status with the program, and this is what he had to say. He said, "I wanted this to be my last rodeo and signed a contract that has a no-compete clause with anybody in the Big Ten because I found my home." If you're an Illinois fan, you're kind of ecstatic about this. You're coming off your best season where you nearly pulled off the upset against Michigan and you nearly made the Big Ten title game for the first time. If you're an Illinois fan, you're thrilled that Bret Bielema has found a home here in Illinois, and you're really looking forward to building upon that success. Illinois is one of six teams in the Big Ten West that are very, very hopeful that they can win the West and make to the Big Ten title game. It's a wide open division, and with how Bret Bielema has built that team, it wouldn't surprise me if Illinois is in the Big Ten title game. Now we'll stay in the West here with Nebraska and new head coach Matt Rhule, who's making the transition back to the college football ranks after kind of failing over at the Carolina Panthers in the NFL. It was in his opening statements, the quote I liked from him during Big Ten Media Days. He said, "There was a time when Nebraska football was feared. We're not at that point yet. We need to take back the respect it is to play Nebraska. We want our fans, opponents, and all of college football to respect us, taking back and bringing back respect to Nebraska football." With Matt Rhule, it always comes back down to culture, building program. He has a history of building programs at Temple, Baylor. It takes him a couple years, but once he builds it, they are very successful. And he knows how to build a team. I think Nebraska fans are thrilled coming into this season. Um, Looking at the West, you do have it's kind of wide open. Anything can happen. Nebraska is definitely a player. If you're a Nebraska fan, though, you're ecstatic. You're finally, I know you're hopeful with Scott Frost when he was first hired, but now with Matt Rhule, it's a guy that's proven he knows how to build the team. And if you're a Nebraska fan, you're just ecstatic heading into this season. All right, we're gonna stay out west again here with Iowa. He had a couple. Kirk Ferentz had a couple quotes about the betting gambling scandal over at Iowa, but I kind of wanted to stay away from the scandals for the Big Ten media days. Kind of do everything on a positive note or a funny note or just something that caught my attention. Besides, the bad things that are going on in the conference. So Kirk Ferentz, he said, "I really kind of learned the importance of a great punter back in 1981, my first year ever at Iowa." So it just comes full circle with the kind of offense they had last year and kind of being the laughing stock of the Power Five, basically, with that offense that was just terrible. Wasted a great defense, won a couple games just based on defensive scores. Just really funny to hear Kirk Ferentz have a quote based on a punter. Really on brand for Iowa, and it just, brought a smile to my face. All right, let's head back east and check in on Maryland, where head coach Mike Locksley is entering his fifth year here at Maryland and his fifth year in the Big Ten. During his main press conference, he said, "We're here to compete for championships. You haven't heard me say that in the previous 4 times I've been in front of you guys, but that's the goal." So it's signaling a change of the guard to me, a change in expectations of the program. Maryland's ready to compete. Mike Locksley thinks he has the team to start competing in the Big Ten East. I don't think he does this year, being, he has to go against Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. It's going to be very hard. Maryland's stuck in the biggest, toughest division in all of college football. I mean, it's better than any SEC division, ACC, Pac 12. I mean, Maryland's smack dab in the middle of the toughest division in college football. The talent, Mike Locksley's great at talent acquisition, and he's been building this program up, and he finally feels like he has the team that he needs. I think it might be easier next year once they go divisionless, where you can afford to lose a game or two and still make the Big Ten title game, and you can avoid playing all three of the big dogs in one single season. But yeah, it's refreshing to see Maryland and Mike Locksley. They have higher expectations this season, and it's going to be interesting to watch. All right, we'll stay in the East and check in on Greg Schiano of Rutgers. Preface this quote by saying there was a wall there at media days that had all the logos of all the teams in the Big Ten. Greg Schiano said on the biggest challenge at Rutgers, he was asked on what the biggest challenge at Rutgers was, and he said those logos on the wall. We play in the biggest, best conference in the country. We have to build a program that can compete at that level and then someday be a championship level program. So, I mean, it's kind of Greg Schiano saying the obvious out loud. Rutgers, to be competitive in this conference, he has to build it so it can compete at the level of the Ohio States, the Michigan, the Penn State, the USC that's coming in, and whoever else is coming into the Big Ten. Saying, like I said, it's a building plan for Greg Schiano. He's done it once before. I mean, it was a different time. I mean, there's different circumstances now. There wasn't NIL back then. There is now. Rutgers doesn't have the biggest alumni base or the biggest NIL funds to go compete. But Greg Schiano is doing the right things, and he is building the program the right way. He's going to have to build it from the high school ranks up. Rutgers isn't going to be a big transfer destination, so he has to do it with a bunch of 3-star guys, a couple 4-star guys sprinkled in. But it's definitely doable. I mean, he's proved it once before. He's still at least a couple years away before, he can get that Rutgers team to where he wants it. But I mean, it is what it is. And, Greg Schiano, he's in a place where he started, and, it's probably where he ends his career. But yeah, that's what Greg Schiano had to say on the biggest challenges facing Rutgers. All right, now we'll head back out to the West Division with Wisconsin, where new head coach Luke Fickell took the podium for the first time as a Big Ten coach. He was asked about what Fickle-ball is all about. He responded with, "It's not about me. Hopefully we will all understand that. It's about the way we can do things together." I mean, pretty generic coach speak. Really, the reporter was looking about, the spread concept coming to Wisconsin, which Wisconsin's never run in the history of Wisconsin. They've never been an explosive, spread you out, beat you with speed team. It's going to be interesting to see with this roster if it can adapt to Fickle-ball, if they have the quarterback. I know they brought 3 different transfer quarterbacks in. They haven't named a quarterback yet. So does Wisconsin Luke Fickell have the personnel he needs to run his style offense? I'm sure he'll adapt to what they have. But I'm sure in this first year, it's not going to be all the players that he needs or the skill sets that he needs for players. But with Luke Fickell coming in, I mean, it's going to make Wisconsin more exciting. It's not just going to be great defense and run the ball like every other team in the Big Ten West. So yeah, Luke Fickell is going to bring a breath of fresh air to Wisconsin and to the Big Ten West. All right, now let's go to Minnesota head coach PJ Fleck. I know I said I was going to stay out of the weeds on the recent scandals that are kind of all over the Big Ten, but I don't think the Minnesota one's really a big deal. He was asked about PJ Fleck was asked about the program culture, and he said our program culture is proven to work on and off the field. It's always done in a first class manner. If anybody has any issues, there's 6 different ways to report it. I'm not going to list those. But yeah, I mean, PJ Fleck, he's a culture guy. Ever since he first came on the scene with Western Michigan and Row the Boat, I mean, that's what PJ Fleck does. He has a certain culture, he has a certain way about him. I mean, you're either a PJ Fleck guy or you're not. I can see how he could rub some people the wrong way, but for the most part, I mean, Minnesota's been successful with him. Going into this season, I mean, I think they're one of the dark horses here that could contend for the Big Ten West title. Because, you look at the top 4 or 5 teams over in that division, there's not much separating them. So this could be a big year for Minnesota and PJ Fleck. And as he continues to build that program and that program culture, row the boat, as he would say. All right, let's go and check in with Mel Tucker with Michigan State. One of Big Ten favorite coaches. I don't know if I'd say favorite, but definitely interesting, good or bad. Mel Tucker was asked about the escalating Michigan State rivalry, probably coming off the heels of, the tunnel incident and all that stuff. And when he was asked about it, how do you rein it in? I don't know how you do that, was his response. This was followed by a Twitter storm between Michigan and Michigan State fans. Some threats in there, but overall, most of the Twitter was positive and saying how friendly the rivalry really is and how, there's much more important things in football instead of causing harm to the other fan base. The Michigan State rivalry definitely took a step in the wrong direction last year with the physical altercation in the tunnel. But this is a new season that should all be behind. The Michigan State game this year is at Michigan State at night. So I mean, it's going to be a great game, great atmosphere, and I think both fan bases will behave themselves and have a really good time. And that's what college football is really all about. All right, now let's move on to the team facing the most scrutiny this offseason. We got our first kind of conversation from the interim head coach, David Braun at Northwestern. We all know what's going on there. But he had to say about kind of the state of the locker room, state of the program. He said, our guys right now in that facility are going through a lot. And we have an opportunity to either run from that or an opportunity to truly stare that adversity in the face. So it sounds like he's kind of brought that locker room together. I know a couple people have transferred out, which, I mean, good for them. They didn't sign up for any of this. They've all been freshmen so far. But yeah, the whole Northwestern situation, I touched on it in episode 1. It's really out there and not acceptable in today's world. David Braun, the interim head coach, he just came in this off season from FCS school, so I mean he doesn't really have any say in the culture. So he wasn't really part of what was going on. He's got his work cut out for him this season. I doubt that he'll be named the full-time head coach. I'm sure that search is going to go well into the season, and could come down to a couple different coordinators that are already in the Big Ten. But yeah, that's what our first look at Northwestern interim head coach David Braun had to say about the state of Northwestern. And I mean, let's face it, Northwestern's probably in for a long season this season. All right, now we get to our last newcomer to the Big Ten. Not exactly a newcomer. He's coming over from Illinois as the defensive coordinator. We have Purdue's new head coach, Ryan Walters. New slogan for this season as he's, running his first Power 5 program. He says Purdue's slogan for this season is "We're trying to bless you, not stress you." And what he's talking about is the culture of the program. He's trying to bless his players, not stress them. He's trying to get buy-in on a new program, new culture. And he's looking to try to make everything easy in the transition. You had a lot of, Jeff Boehm's guys there. A lot of them stayed. So getting used to Ryan Walters and how he runs a program as he's learning to run a program. So his strategies going in is, try to make things easy on his players as far as transition goes and try not to stress the players out. You don't hear that much from head football coaches, but I like it. Might, add this into my everyday profile. We're trying to bless you, not stress you. Now let's take a look at Penn State. I saved the three biggest teams for last year. Penn State, head coach James Franklin is going to his 10th season as Penn State head coach. He's been very vocal about NIL efforts at Penn State and how they're 2 years behind. In his opening statement, he said, "Our players after the season were contacted by other programs to transfer and were offered deals." So, yeah, I mean, it really proves in today's college football world that a program as big as Penn State is being poached for talent by bigger SEC schools and teams with more NIL money. Penn State didn't lose any starters to the portal. So James Franklin was able to contain this and keep his core together for what is expected to be James Franklin's most talented roster. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of blown away by this. You're thinking, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, these programs are big enough to where they shouldn't really have to worry about NIL deals. But like James Franklin has said, it's time for Penn State fans and alumni to step up. And this is the college football world we live in. They have to play 2 years to catch up in the NIL world. And this hopefully will open the eyes of some Penn State fans. Now let's move on to Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. The now drill that has become famous this offseason is the Beat Georgia drill. As we know, Michigan and Jim Harbaugh instituted a Beat Ohio State drill a couple years ago. And now all of a sudden they have won the last two matchups pretty handily over the Buckeyes. When asked about the Beat Georgia drill, Jim Harbaugh said, like our good friend Ric Flair says, if you want to be the man, you have to beat the man. The reporter then asked him to add a woo, and that's the one thing I got to get better at, Jim Harbaugh responded. So we know it's worked in the past when Jim Harbaugh institutes this drill that focuses on one team or one aspect of the game that the other team is really good at. Basically, the Beat Georgia drill is a run game drill, from what I've read, that focuses on being able to run the ball when the other team knows you're going to run the ball. We all know Georgia has a very physical, bigger, faster, stronger defense than anybody in the country, and Michigan's just focusing on being able to run the ball against a defense of that caliber. They have no problem against Penn State last year, Ohio State running the ball. It's just another motivational tactic, kind of keep Michigan focused. They're not really going to be tested much this year. And they're not tested at this season until they head down to Happy Valley to face Penn State. So I think this drill is more to keep the team focused. And when you're a national championship contender, you got to do these kind of drills to keep the team engaged and not get too far ahead of themselves. So hopefully Jim Harbaugh will work on his Ric Flair imitation, and we can get that out of him by the end of the season. Last but not least, we move on to Ohio State and Ryan Day. Ryan Day was asked about the Michigan rivalry schedule, basically, if he's okay with it staying at the end of the season or if he's open to it changing weeks and not being the last game of the season. When asked, he said, "I'm glad we still have the rivalry game. I do think we should consider when we play it, just because you may end up playing it back-to-back weeks, which would be awkward." So what Ryan Day is looking at here is, that the game is the last game of the season traditionally. And if, the trends keep continuing, you'd be looking at Michigan and Ohio State playing in back-to-back weeks, which I don't think would be the best for the Big Ten. If you put the Ohio State-Michigan game in the middle of the season, you could definitely increase both teams' chances of making the playoff, especially when it expands to 12 teams next season. Jim Harbaugh had some of the same similar comments. He's open to moving the schedule around to accommodate the game and increase the Big Ten's chances as getting as many teams in the playoff as possible. For Ohio State, I don't think it matters when the game's played. They're really trying to look how to get back into the winning column. And like you said, nobody wants to see really Ohio State and Michigan go against each other in back-to-back weeks. Kind of takes the luster out of the game. It takes a lot out of it, I think, if they're going to end up playing back-to-back weeks once the Big Ten goes divisionless. So interested to see how the Big Ten scheduling goes from here on out, considering the game, and we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I think this game will move off of its traditional last game of the regular season, just for the benefit of both teams and the Big Ten. So that'll do it here on episode 2, Big Ten Media Days. This was the We Are Big YouTube show. Like, rate, subscribe, share. Let's try to really build a community and have fun with this. Thank you for watching.